Alright, what's up guys? So we're out here in the garage today. We haven't been able to ride in literally weeks probably. So I figured I would do a little video for you guys on the valve lash for XT225. So as you can see, I've already removed the little cover to allow me to spin the engine over, and I'm in a situation that hopefully you're not in, where this inspection cover, so that you can view the timing mark, is completely seized up on there. Cannot get it off. I can stick like a big quarter in there that fits that slot good, put pliers on it, and it's not budging, so I'm gonna leave well enough alone. I know how to find top dead center on the compression stroke without needing that. You can just watch your valves move and you'll figure it out, or it can be done. So anyway, I've got the inspection cover off, and because of that situation, I have already turned the engine over and gotten to top dead center. I'm confident of that. Again, watching the valves move. So I'm confident of where I'm at. If you're doing this yourself, if you view through that inspection cover, you will see a timing mark that will line up with a notch in the case. I would like to use this time to advocate for these Motion Pro feeler gauges. I only have a 2 and a 3, so I can use this on the intake side, which is going to come in handy considering how tight the Axxis is on the intake side, being way up in here. If you've got the stock metal tank, you might have a little bit more room. I also would advocate for you to wash the bike. As you can see, I did not do that. However, I did, before taking, for example, this cover off on the front of the head, exposing the exhaust valve, I did spray this entire area with super clean and wipe everything down. But wash your bike. So I can use this on the intake side. I'm going to show you on the exhaust side. But it is a standard tappet style adjuster that's been around for ever since overhead valves have been around. I'm sure this adjuster's been around. So when removing this cover, it'll be wise to inspect that O-ring, and mine looks good, so I'll be reusing it. It is a little squished at the bottom, which it's not all the way up out of that slot, but if it leaks, you'll know it pretty soon, and it's easy enough to replace if needed. You have 3 bolts on the front here around that exhaust valve. All 3 bolts are the exact same length, so you don't have to worry about getting them mixed up. And then let me try to get some light on here for you so you can see it a little better. That's what we're looking at, that's what we're dealing with. And I would also like to point out that you should never set out to do this job with the intention of adjusting your valves. It's always a valve inspection, and upon that inspection failing spec, then adjust. If it's in spec, just leave well enough alone, especially on these air-cooled engines. The spec for the exhaust side is either 6 to 8 thou or 6 to 7 thou, thousandths of an inch. And on the intake side, it's 2 to 4. Even if you were tight on those specs, it's going to run for thousands of miles, most likely, before eventually getting out of spec. So if it's in spec at all, just leave well enough alone. So here I've just got a set of automotive feeler gauges from O'Reilly's or Advanced Auto, wherever I bought them. This one is 6 thou, which converts to 0.15 millimeters, which is as tight as we'd want to be on our exhaust valve. And I can slip it in there with one hand, pass it all the way through. So just for devil's advocate, we will find our 7th thou feeler gauge and see if we can get it to go. Sometimes it helps to bend the ends of them. I've never used this 7th thou, or at least I don't think I have, so it's not been bent yet. And it will not pass through. So we are a little tight, but we are in spec, because a 6 will pass through without issue. Sometimes you got to kind of have 2 hands and really choke up on this and kind of force it through. And since I can pass it through with all this flimsy length, we're above 6 thousandths. So if you wanted to try to pinpoint where I was, I am a machinist by trade. I would say we're at 6.5 thousandths. And for what it's worth, you got to have 2 10,000ths just to be able to pass anything through. It's pretty common knowledge in a machine shop around dealing with, bore holes, counter bores, for example, with measuring with gauge pens. So if you've got a 6 thousandths gap, you'll never pass a 6 thousandths feeler gauge through it, not without forcing it through very hard. So whatever gauge you can get to pass through, you can guarantee you're at least 2 10,000ths of an inch bigger than that. So based off how this feels, I would say we're at 6.5 thousandths, 0.0065 at least. So I'm not going to touch it, because you should never set out to adjust your valves. You should always set out to inspect them. If you did need to adjust it, I really hope you can see this. You've got a 6-sided standard nut there, and then a 4-sided hex on the end of that tappet adjuster. So you would loosen up your nut, and then you take a pair of needle nose pliers. They sell a tool that fits over that square hex. I do not have one. So you can just take a pair of needle nose pliers and hold that hex. You can adjust it by hand once you get the nut loose, but then when you go to tighten the nut down, that adjuster is going to try to move a little bit. So when you go to tighten the nut, just grab that hex with a good pair of pliers to try to hold it steady. Tighten your nut down. It's not going to the moon. There's no need to really torque down on this thing. If I had to guess, 70 to 80 inch-pounds would be the spec. That's all it needs. You just got to nip it up. And then always recheck with your feeler gauge to make sure that it didn't move and that it's still where you want it. Then you can reinstall the cover and go to the intake side. Doesn't matter which side you do first. Again, top dead center on the compression stroke is what you're after. And if you're unsure if that's where you're at, you can watch the valves move and should be able to figure it out. The intake side, I'm not going to show you me doing it, because with the aftermarket tank and everything on here, this is going to be really tight for me to work around. But on the exhaust side, you can see it well. So on the intake side, again, like 2 to 4 thousandths, I believe, is the spec for this bike, and the exhaust is either 6 to 8 or 6 to 7. And again, I pass a 6 clean through there, so I'm in spec. So I'm gonna get the intake side done. Based off how this engine runs, I fully expect it to be in spec, but again, haven't been able to ride. I've had really crappy weather, so I figured it would at least be a good time to double check. So anyway, that's how you would go about doing it. I'm sorry I can't show you finding top dead center the correct way using the timing mark, but I cannot get that cover off. I'm sure I could put a pair of channel lock pliers on the outside and then keep a screwdriver or something on the inside and get it to break free, but I really don't want to mar it up super bad on the outside when I know I can find top dead center without taking that out. So that was what I decided to do. So if you're not confident and you are having issues as well getting yours off, frozen on there, you know, they don't make these bikes anymore, so they're all starting to get pretty dated. That's what I'd recommend doing. If you're not confident finding top dead center without being able to see your timing mark, and that is frozen on, I would recommend grabbing with a pair of channel locks on the top, and then you can fit something larger than a flathead in there. Again, a quarter usually fits in these flathead slots pretty good, and the bottom of that slot's got a bit of a radius to it, so quarter or something similar fit in there, and you can grab that with a pair of pliers, and then try to turn both together and hopefully not scuff up the outside too bad, and then reinstall your covers when you're done, and you'll be good to go.